Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All things Middle Earth here with a video looking at the commander Haldir. We're going to break down every single aspect of this commander's kit and let you make a decision on whether or not you think he's going to be worth investing time into. So stay tuned, all that's coming up in just 1 second. Now, before we jump into the video, I wanted to make everyone aware of the Discord build videos channel we have. This is where all of these discussions are taking place, so I'm not just making all this information up. I'm testing when I can, but this is a pretty large group of people we have here in our build videos channel in the Discord. So linked in the description of this video and pretty much all of my videos is one link that contains all of my social links, so you'll see things like Twitch and Discord in there. So if you're interested in joining us, click the Discord one to join that, and then all you have to do is reach out to our admin, Archangel here, and let him know that you would like to join the build videos channel. He'll give you the proper roles, and then you'll be able to see everything here, all the main stuff from just being a member, but then also the build videos channel at the very bottom, where we just had this conversation about Haldir, which has been fantastic, where we're talking about lots and lots of different builds, talking about all kinds of things about this character. So if you want to join these conversations for future commanders, that you'd be more than welcome to do so. I believe we're going to be talking about Grima next as a tier 1 commander, followed by Boromir. So if you've got a Grima or a Boromir and you want to add your 2 cents in, definitely join us over here. But that Discord is how we're making these spreadsheets, which have gotten a little bit more involved as we've gone along. But again, my whole point of this is I want anyone who's brand new to the game to be able to look at the spreadsheet and see what the best case scenario is for this commander, so they can see, is this long-term going to be worth investing in? And also just seeing, okay, at R0, at R1, whatever, how is this commander going to be performing compared to other commanders? And there are better commanders at R1, there are better commanders at R5, so you can kind of get an idea of what you want to go for. So that's kind of the overview of the Discord side of things, and we'll be referencing this spreadsheet, and this is obviously going to be linked in the description as well. I did change how I'm linking this. From now on, whenever I link this spreadsheet, it's going to give you the whole spreadsheet, so you can click down at the bottom here and look back through previous commander builds we've done, but the most recent one should be the one on the far left, so we're looking at how they're here, but that way you can look back at all the previous ones, and eventually this whole sheet will have every tier 1 commander in the game, unless they just keep adding a ton of them. So that is all of that, but let's go ahead and jump into the actual commander review. All right, so before jumping into the actual builds for Haldir, we're going to give a quick overview. Haldir is going to be an Elven commander. He has the balance tag, so at level 20 you're going to unlock the balance ability here, where he's going to get 25 might, focus, and speed with an additional 2 skill points. And then his stats very quickly are going to be, the highest is going to be his might at 1.78 per level, then you have focus at 1.06 per level, and then you have his speed at 1.26 per level. So those are all the stats for Haldir. Again, good might commander, which is why we're going to see that his probably best build, in my opinion, is going to have to do with troops doing damage, which again, if we see here, might increases the damage caused by units, focus is going to decrease the damage caused to units, and so if they've got really high might, there's a good chance that either they're going to be doing the damage or the troops are going to be doing damage. So we're going to show a couple options for that here with his might. Along with the ale, Haldir's going to require the Lambeth spread, which is the same thing as Boromir, which again, the whole reason I make these videos, and we're going to be doing Boromir very shortly, is that if you are starting the game and you get this Lambeth spread and you're going, okay, who do I give it to, Haldir or Boromir? I'd like to be able to give a pretty just factual answer of who I think is the better commander overall. Sometimes it does get situational, so it can come down to preference, but again, Haldir's going to require that Lambeth spread as well as the ale, like all of the tier 1 commanders. Now we come to probably the most important part of the video, looking at these skills. Now I'm going to do a quick overview of all of them, so as we're talking, you kind of know a little bit more what I'm talking about, but we'll spend more time when we're looking at the most specific builds. But starting up here in no particular order with the March Warden of Lorien, this is going to be against one enemy target. He's going to deal 16%. This is the starting values at 0, so this is going to scale up. He's going to deal 16% physical damage, and one allied unit is going to avoid the next damage. This skill is solid, but this is going to be in every build, but probably not in the way you expect. So keep an eye on March Warden of Lorien. Then we have Call of the Week, which is against enemy targets with the lowest defense. You're going to deal 30% physical damage. And then Elite, which is going to give Haldir an extra 7% might and focus. So that's the March Warden of Lorien tree. Then below that in the R1 tree as well, we have Guide, which for the first 2 rounds, all allied units are going to deal an additional 3% damage. Again, starting value here. So that's going to scale up to 45%. And the max level effect is, while damage is increased, the army gains stun immunity. So this is a pretty good one. If you're using a lot of troops and relying on them doing the damage, the 2-round stun immunity is going to be very nice for him. Then we have Foresight, which is going to be for the first 4 rounds. All allied units are going to have a 10% chance to ignore enemies' avoidance stats each round. This ability had a little bit more viability back when the Oathbreakers, this was going to basically be one of the really, really good ways to counter Oathbreakers, but they changed how the kit works with Oathbreakers. So this skill is not really going to get a whole lot of love. There are some situations where this could come in handy, but for the most part, it's very, very, very situational, and it's not going to be really in a lot of the builds we're going to talk about today. Then we have Armed Escort, which is against one enemy target. You're going to deal 20% physical damage, and one allied unit is going to recover 12.8% HP, modified by the focus stat. Moving on, we have Sylvan Elf. This is going to be for the commander. The commander is going to deal an additional 4.6 physical damage, as well as 4.6 poison damage. Again, the starting values there. And then the max level effect is going to be that the poison damage is going to last for 2 rounds. Then we have Beast Training, where beasts are going to recover 14.2% HP per round. And then lastly, in the R3 tree, we have Forest Agility. Allied range units are going to have a 2.9% chance of attacking twice per round. Maxed out, that's going to sit you at a 20% chance. So pretty low. If this was any higher, I feel like this commander would probably be a lot more viable. If this sat closer to, this in reality, if you go 10 rounds, this is maybe going to hit twice. So not amazing, but still a solid skill. And then lastly, the Respect 5 skill is going to be Galadrim, which is going to be for allied range units. Their physical damage is going to be increased by 1.2%, modified by the speed stat with a max level effect of Might 15. Then we have Fortify. While defending, allied units are going to receive 2.5% less physical damage starting out. And then lastly, Shield Training. For range units, they're going to receive a total of 14% less damage if this skill is maxed out. All right, now we're going to look at the spreadsheet. Now that we've looked at the general idea of how Haldir works, or at least what skills he has, we're going to look at the spreadsheet. Again, this is probably going to be the format that I'm going with for the rest of the time I do these, so it should be pretty straightforward moving forward. But this far left column is going to be locked, so you can scroll down here. So if you want to scroll and look at the R5 build maybe a little bit closer, make sure you can see all the skills, you can do that. But that's going to be locked there. We have it builds, and then ideal gear, ideal troops, and factions that the commander will benefit the most from. And then right here in the column 15, you can see the ranking for all of these different builds. Up here next to the builds, you can see if it requires respect, 1 through 0, 3, 5, and so on. And then the skill priority is what these numbers are here. So whatever has the 1, you're going to do first. 2 is second. I suppose I could just put first, second, third, and maybe I will update that. But again, you get the idea. Start with the 1, work your way up. And then on the items here, now that the spreadsheet's going to be linked in this same format, you're actually going to be able to click on the items and see any notes that are put down. So sometimes with items, they have certain effects. So for example, the Scout's Mail, I have Shroud as the effect suggestion here, but you can now see those notes if they have the little, there's like a little black triangle in the corner right there. So that is kind of how the spreadsheet works. So let's go ahead and talk through these builds. Again, I'm going to spend the most time on the best build, but leave the other builds here for you to look at, which again, if you didn't see, starting here in the 15th column, the best build is going to be the Eagle and Ranged Unit build, which is going to be the Respect 5 build, and that's going to be ranked just at a solid B, and then everything else kind of steps down from there. So we have the full Ranged Troop R5 build at a C+. Again, it's kind of splitting hairs here. I do think that the Eagle and Ranged build at a B is the best build right here, and this one could maybe be a B-, and we could be really generous in our stepping down of letter grades, but it doesn't matter that much. The big thing for you to know, for Haldir, he's going to be best used at Respect 5, and that's going to involve needing Eagles. So it is a situational character. In certain areas of the map, he's not going to be as viable, which I think is very important, which again, that's why we have the ideal faction category, so you can see what is needed to make this work, because if you don't have Eagles and you don't have good ranged units, you're not going to get the most out of this commander. So again, we have the full Ranged Troop R5 build at a C+, then the Eagle build at a C just below that, and then the early round troop damage build at a D. This could be a C-. I feel harsh putting it in the D category, but it's just not very good. And again, a lot of the commanders really need more than just their R1 abilities. I do think there are some that do a lot better with their R1 abilities only. And I think those are really good commanders to focus on early game, especially as a free-to-play player. But especially for tier 1 commanders, it's not ridiculous to get these guys up to R5. It will take a little bit of time, but it's definitely something you can work towards. So again, all that to say, this is the Eagle range build for Haldir. I do have 2 columns here because there were 2 different suggestions. The core starting point is the same, and they're going to include all the same skills, but we had 2 different suggestions for the order of these, so I wanted to include both of those. So let's go ahead and hop back over to the game. Okay, so for this build, as you see on the spreadsheet, they are both going to start with Sylvan Elf first, followed by the Beast Training. So here you can see the max stat values here. The commander damage gets up to 70% for physical and poison, and the heal for the Eagles is 100% HP per round. So this is going to be the starting point for this build. And then we have two options. You can either go into Guide, followed by Armed Escort, which is going to be down here. So you can go Guide, and then into Armed Escort, followed by Forest Agility and Galadrim. So that's going to be down here with Forest Agility and then Galadrim right here. Or the secondary option is going to be after Sylvan Elf and Beast Training, you can go into Forest Agility next, and then Galadrim, and then Guide, and then Armed Escort. So we were kind of debating the differences of the different values you got out of this. Again, ideally, you're going to have all of these skills to make this build really good, but we had talked about, you know, the advantages of going into one over the other. And I think it's going to be somewhat minor. If you have experience with Haldir, and first of all, you should join our Discord and share this information with us, but feel free to leave in the comments below if you have a preference of what to go into. But again, this commander is a little bit point heavy on the requirements, and so it's going to be very, you know, this is a commander you're going to probably need at as high respect as possible. It's not going to hurt to impart wisdom, and he's going to need to be at a pretty high level because he has a lot of skills to make him kind of just viable. So that is going to be the Eagle and range build. And then we have to look over at the sheet. I have some different gear suggestions. Again, these gear suggestions are not the end all be all for him, but the things you need to keep in mind for this build specifically, we're working with Eagles and range troops, is we want anything that's going to help those units do better. And so that's the lens I was looking through when I picked through this gear. So for example, I have the Mirkwood bow here, or a cutlass. And so the Mirkwood bow and the cutlass both do army attack. The Mirkwood bow does army attack for ranged. The cutlass does army attack for melee. So depending on you know, your Eagles and what range troops you're using, really whatever you have is going to be fine, because that extra attack is going to be nice for them. I might suggest the Mirkwood bow because I think the Eagles already do pretty solid damage, so an extra 3 is probably less of a big deal to the Eagles than it might be to a ranged unit. So the Mirkwood bow here as a purple item is going to be my suggestion. I didn't have something in the gold item here, not because there aren't good gold items, but I'm just focusing on what really stood out as being good for this build. But then we have allied elves have damage dealt here. That's a fine one here. Again, just thinking through the lens of I'm using Eagles, I'm using ranged troops. Is it going to help those things? If not, try and get something else. If it is, it's probably going to be great. That's the Mirkwood bow. Again, we can keep going down the list. I'm not going to look through every single one, but we have something like the Scout's Mail with Shroud. We have the full helmet, which is a completely might focused purple helmet. So just get that might higher so your troops do more damage. And then for the purple items for accessories, I do think there are some other options. So leave those down below if you think you have something really, really good for a Haldir build like this. But for all the purple item suggestions for accessories, I just put anything with sustain or mend effects to add some extra healing. So we're looking at the Hith Lane, the Wizard's Fireworks, or the Worn Out Smoking Pipe. All of those have a healing effect. And so if you have one of those, that's completely refined. So here I have the Hith Lane with mend. It's not refined at all, so the healing is pretty low, but I do have it. I'd had this one strengthened out, so I went with this one. Here you can see the Worn Out Smoking Pipe. This one is refined 4 times, and so it's got the every 2 rounds all allies recover. So there's a slight difference here in terms of how many allies. So the Hith Lane's just for 1 ally, so the healing's going to be a little bit more. This one's for everyone. So maybe if you have a good one that covers all allies, that would be a better choice. But again, just getting some extra healing for these troops as they're going through to kind of limit your troop losses, especially with Eagles being a pretty expensive unit. Okay, and moving on from the items, we're going to look at the ideal troop composition for this build. Again, if you didn't know, it's going to be Eagles, obviously. So the suggestion I got was going to be about 40% Eagles with 60% ranged troops. So you're going to have to have Eagles for this build. So again, we have the search feature here where you can go and find the Eagles, so you can see kind of general idea where they are in the map. It's kind of more middle of the map area. So you need to be playing as a faction that can use Eagles, obviously, and then be in this area. So Lotr is a great faction for that. Erebor can do it. They're close to it. It just depends on where you're at in the season. If you're starting out day one, you're about to start playing the game, and you want to run Haldir, if he's your favorite character, then maybe Lotr would be a good option, because you're going to have access to those right away. So that is the Eagles. You're going to run them at about 40%. The next suggestion is going to be about 60% for ranged units, the best option being March Wardens, which is the tier 4 troop for Lotr. So again, you can see it on the sheet already if you're looking at it, but the ideal suggestion for a faction for this build is going to be Lotr. It doesn't mean it can't have success with other factions. It's just going to get harder and harder. And so bring in the March Wardens. If you don't have March Wardens, obviously just going with whatever the next best ranged unit you have. And there was another suggestion of having a third unit type, looking at something like the Bow Knights. because basically you want to bring in 3 different types of troop compositions, because there are a lot of abilities in the game that affect madness on like against 2 troop types. So if we bring in the March Wardens, we have the Bow Knights, and we have the Eagles, there's less of a chance of the March Wardens getting hit with the madness, because that's going to be probably the most devastating for your army. But if you just bring in Eagles and March Wardens and you get hit with a two army, affects 2 armies madness effect, everyone's going to be affected by madness. So the idea is that it hopefully would be a little bit less. So you could run a 3 troop composition with Bow Knights in there, but again, just ideally using the best range troops you have. And then again, at the very bottom, like I already mentioned, you can see the ideal or the faction that this commander will benefit the most from. I might just also say the faction that is easiest to use as commander with, because again, if you start off anywhere in the map, you could start off as Linden and conquer the entire map, hypothetically, and you would have access to Eagles. You would not have the tier 4 unit there. But again, Lotr is going to be the ideal faction here. They have access to range units early, and they have access to Eagles pretty much right away as soon as you can take them. A faction that I would maybe just caution against would be like Gondor. Gondor doesn't have starting ranged units, so if you're wanting to run Haldir really, really early game and you do get his respect up to use this, A, you're far from Eagles, and B, you don't have ranged units available right away. Now, that's not to say you won't eventually have them, but just thought I'd make that point there. But again, that is going to be the best build, the Eagle and ranged build for Haldir here. I think I forgot to mention when I was going through the skills, at the very top here for March Warden of Lorien, you can see it's 1 point of damage, 1 point needed for damage avoidance, and I want to make sure I pointed that out. So if we look at Haldir, if you remember this March Warden of Lorien, with 1 point, you will be able to trigger this 1 allied unit avoid next physical damage. So every single build you use for Haldir is going to include 1 point in March Warden of Lorien, because that's going to get you the 1 allied unit avoids the next damage received. So wanted to make sure I put that out there. It's on the sheet as well. But again, we're going Sylvan Elf, we're going Beast Training. Pretty much whenever you have an extra point, throw it here. Again, ideally, you're going to have enough to do all these things, but that is something I wanted to make sure we pointed out at the very top here for March Warden of Lorien. It's not really needed for the builds. Again, the more points you have, the better. Feel free to go into anything, but you're going to look here and see that every build is going to suggest 1 point into that. But that's going to pretty much do it for the Haldir build video. Again, you can look at any of these columns here and look through the different builds. If you have him at R0 and 1, you're going to start with Guide and then go into Armed Escort, then followed by, I believe next you're going to go to March Warden of Lorien with points into Cole the Weak, and then Elite first. Again, I'll make sure the numbers make sense, but again, start with the lowest, work to the highest. Those are the skills you're going to do. It's not going to be the most amazing, but for ideal troops there, for example, you're just going to use the best troops you have. Again, looking at what gear you have. So I also suggested green and blue gear here, because if you're running the R1 build or R0 build for more than like a very, very short amount of time, really, if you just pulled Haldir and you're free to play and you're going to be here for a while, the reality is you probably don't have a ton of gold and purple gear to choose from. So it doesn't really make sense for me to suggest a ton of gold gear that needs to be refined several times. So I put in, basically the green and blue suggestions here. But again, you get the idea. The spreadsheet's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, if you have any questions, you can also join the Discord and feel free to ask if something doesn't make sense. But it should be pretty clearly laid out. You have all the builds here. You can scroll. So if you want to look at a specific one, if you want to look at the full Eagle build here, this is what that looks like. It's ranked at a C. You can see some item suggestions that are going to complement the Eagle builds here. The ideal units, Eagles, and any factions near Eagle is the factions that you'll benefit the most from. So again, that is a sheet. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, the goal for these videos is just to give us the best understanding of these commanders. So if you're new to the game, you can look at ideally all of these, or at least look through the spreadsheet and see who is ranking the best. Who's the best tier 1 commander at Respect 1? I definitely think we've had some conversations like that in the past, and we have a general idea, but I wanted to have really, really factual stuff laid out. So hopefully this is helpful for you. Everything we talked about today is linked down below. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next video.